Hey mages, welcome to today's MTG Arena video, and today we're looking at Historic, and primarily Historic on a budget is what we're looking at. Can you play Historic on a budget? Well, yes you can. I've found some really competitive meta decks that are doing really well with percentages that have just a lot less rares than a lot of the other decks. Now, after breezing through some of Historic decks, there's decks with 25, 30, 40 plus rares, a bit like Standard in some way, but there's a lot more higher power in Historic. But if you've been thinking about dabbling your toes in it and you want something to, just have a little go and see what it's like, then these decks are ready for you to play without a doubt. Now, before we get on to looking at decks, I've just been asked so many questions. What is this 1,000 gold reward? Well, it is a thing that I haven't completed. It's complete 3 quick draft matches. Hopefully that will answer everyone's questions. That is what that is on my screen. So without further ado, let's take a look at the decks. So today's first deck is just 7 rares. It is a blue-white aura deck. Very nice deck. Now, a lot of in these budget decks, the rares are taken up on the lands. So you can definitely increase the lands if you want to with the rares. If you've got even more hallowed fountains, add another couple of them in. It's not going to make it bad. We've also got 4 Hengegate pathways, and that is 6 of the rare lands. Now, the only other rare in this deck is Gandalf the White. This is just a mythic. Flash, you may cast legendary spells and artifact spells as though they have flash, and this deck is full of artifacts. So if you love artifact decks, this is definitely the deck for you to give a try and maybe craft up. Now, this is a really good card. One of in there, could you go without it? Possibly you could, but like I always say, the decks that I look at that have been doing well have this in there, so I will leave that completely up to you. But the rest of the deck is just commons and uncommons, which is really, really good. And a lot of cards from recent Standard as well, and new Standard. So before we get on, let's have a look. We've got 21 creatures, 19 non-creatures, a 1.7 CMC average with this deck, and it runs 20 lands. Now, you will know this one from Standard, Patchwork Automaton, one of the best cards in this deck, has War 2. All the artifacts in here, we want to be pumping this up and making it a very good attacking creature. Now, we do have a lot of artifacts. We have 31. So 31 artifacts in this deck is definitely a viable thing for Automaton to star and shine in the deck. If you look at some of the other cards as well, we got Michiku's. That's on Standard, same set as Automaton as well. This is one of my favourite sagas. Target creature gets +1/+1 to end the turn for each artifact and enchantment. Now, for me, I love an artifact deck, and this is what, it's got 4 of these straight in there. Absolutely brilliant. Now, Ginger Brute was reprinted, so that's another one that hopefully you will have already to cast 4 in there. Haste can't be blocked or set by creatures with haste, which is very good for this type of deck because the idea is to build it up. Now, if you can get all his glitters on there, +1/+1 for each artifact, on the Ginger Brute, as long as they've got nothing with haste, you've also got Ensoul artifact, which gives it base power 5/5, so it just makes it even bigger. This can be a great unblockable one-swing win. It really, really can if you can build this up quick enough. Other cards in the deck. Play this turn 0. Just get it straight in there, the 0/2. Your first turn, getting this in there. Playing the land, you could possibly then play 2 spells. You could play your Ornithopter, then your Ginger Brute on turn 1. Absolutely brilliant. And then it gets you, where you want to start pumping. Do you need to pump up the flyer, or potentially you want to pump up the unblockable potential in the hastiness of the Ginger Brute as well? We have removal. We've got Glass Casket, artifact removal, very good, and Portable Hole in this deck as well. Even some of the lands are artifacts. So Darksteel Citadel, artifact land, nice uncommon, and Razor Bridge as well, artifact land. So you'll be ticking these up with all these glitters and everything like that, and your Ensoul's really good, building up the Automaton and then just getting through. And the War 2 on this is great protection early on as well. In the deck, Ingenious Smith. Look at the top 4 cards of the library. May reveal an artifact card, put it in your hand. Very nice. Win 1 or more artifacts enter the battlefield under your control. Put a 1/1 counter on it, but the ability only triggers once each turn, which is still a shame, but a great uncommon and fits in for this deck. The other creature that we do have as well is a Vault Scourge flying lifelink. So building this up and then swinging, getting in that life swing can really help against decks like Mono Red as well. So Ginger Brute can be sacked for life, so more protection against those other aggro decks. This is a deck that I really do enjoy. I've played it in paper. I've not played it in arena form. As you can see, I haven't got some of the cards, but I did play a deck very similar to this in paper, an Insult Artifact deck, and when this was back in standard at M15, it was a really fun card to build around and play. So if this is your type of thing, you love artifacts and you love a bit of Aura Magic, this is a deck for you. Now with just 9 rares, we have a mono red deck and it's a Prowess deck. So Prowess is cards like Monastery Swiftspear, recent reprint in standard, so another card that hopefully you'll have. Haste Prowess whenever you cast a non-creature spell, +1/1 until end of turn. Now other creatures that we have that as well is Harmonic Prodigy, which is one of the rares, 3 of these. If an ability of a shaman or another wizard you control, that ability triggers an additional time, which is very, very nice. Other wizards in there, Pyromancer, ends battle 2 damage to any player or planeswalker. Do like that as well. And then it has a lot of burn to complement the Prowess creatures. Your other rare, Soulscar Mage. If a source you control will deal non-combat damage to a creature an opponent draws, they get that many -1/1 counters. So you can potentially get something that's indestructible or something that's just really big and start shrinking down. Other creature, Embereth Veteran in there. This is from a new recent set as well. This has the hero rolls in there. We can sacrifice it, create a young hero attached to another target creature, but a 2/1 for 1 is very nice and getting down. Now, if we have a look at the deck, this got 17 creatures in and 22 non-creatures, a CMC average of 1.9, and the land base is 21. So 17 creatures is quite a nice amount for this, but it does have a lot of other instants and sorceries. Burn for days. Wizard's Lightning. We do have wizards, so this can cost 2 less, 3 damage to any target. Screw the Critics, potentially with the Spectacle cost, can cost 1, another 3 damage to any target as well. Play with Fire for 1 mana, does 2 damage to any target. This is all about burning your opponent down, without a doubt. Those of you that play mono red know how good it is in standard, so this is a really cool version with just 9 rares for you to play in historic. And maybe if you fancy, if you've been playing standard a lot, we do a lot of standard stuff on there, but you fancy playing the other format but worried about the rares and the cost of them, hopefully these decks will help you. And let me know in the comments which ones you're going to play first. We also have Melt Through. Melt Through deals 2 damage to any target. If it's a creature, it perpetually gains more damage is removed at the draw and the cleanup steps. Another cool, but an alchemy card there, A23. Then we have Statistic Discharge. Intensity 3. So perpetual effects are not removed from cards that change zones. Is all the things you can see there. It says this deals damage equal to its intensity to any target, and then cards you named discharge intensify by 1. So it's only going to get better as well. So a lot of different mechanics and cards in here, and a lot of fun mechanics I think you can have in historic, which these are common and uncommon, which is nice, and it can give you just like a different flavor to play a different type of Magic, without a doubt, if you've not played it before. So then we go to the lands, a couple of rare lands in here. We got Den of Bugbear as a 2-of, and Sokizan as well, which is a nice rare land. And then it runs 4 Raminant Ruins, a really good desert uncommon land that can be sacked for 4 mana and deal 2 damage just by sacrificing a desert. And we got 4 deserts in there, and the rest is mountains. Mono red, this will play, very much like your mono red and standard. So if you enjoy that and you have success and you like the way that plays, definitely give this historic version a go. So next up we have an Izzet Wizards decks with 13 rares. Still very budget. Now half of these rares nearly are in the lands. We got Shivan Reef as a 3-of and Steam Vents as a 3-of. Lands, very good crafts, as I always say, especially if you want to get into this format and then start playing, different types of decks. Lands are definitely the ones that you always want to craft first. I always get asked what the first crafts, if you're trying to build it, it's the lands, without a doubt. They make decks a lot more consistent. Now, the other rares in this deck is a full playset of the Soulscar Mage, which is interesting. This in our previous deck as well, so there's a lot of crossover in these decks, which means you might possibly be able to build 2 for like minimal rares as well, which is really good because you get to use the Soulscar Mage in potentially another deck. Now this deck does have a lot of commons and uncommons as well, but the other rare that it has is Dreadhorde Arcane. It's a 1/3 trample. When it attacks, you may cast an instant or sorcery card with mana value less than or equal to its power. Now, this is 1 power when it's as is, and we have a lot of 1 power stuff there as well. We have Sleight of Hand in there, which is a nice card. Look at the top 2 cards, and from a recent set as well, so hopefully you have Play with Fire, standard playable as well. Play with Fire, 2 damage to any target. And then it has Reckless Charge as well. Target creature gets +3/+0 and gains haste till end of turn. Now, this is sorcery, so potentially you could play this, pump it up, and then play something else, but like a static discharge, because the power will be more. This is intensity again. Builds up the intensity, another crossover from the previous deck as well. Wizard's Lightning in there, more removal, crossover again, so another good craft for this deck. And then it has one of the best cards that was printed uncommon. I definitely think Express Iteration was just an absolute house. This isn't legal in Explorer, but it is legal in Historic. So look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, put one of them in the bottom of your library, and exile one of them. You may play the exile card as well. So very good card, and only 2 mana that if this is obviously pumped up with a static discharge, you could then potentially play that as well, or even your Wizard's Lightning. Mentor's Guidance, whenever you cast a spell, copy it if you control a Planeswalker, Cleric, Druid, Shaman, Warlock, or more importantly, the Wizard for us. Scry 1 and draw a card. Scry is great, and the Scry first is brilliant because you can put that to the bottom and then draw your card as well. The other Wizard we have in the deck is Symmetry Sage, 0/3, but this has Magecraft, and it also has Flying, which is nice evasion. Whenever you cast a copy an instant spell, target creature you control has base power 3 until end of turn, which is nice. Get a nice little pumping up and fly over the top as well. Reckless Charge, we spoke about. This is a good way to pump up, but also I didn't mention has flashbacks. You can replay it from the graveyard, which is very, very nice. Now, an important card as well for the deck, Balmor Battlemage Captain, because this has whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, it gives all your creatures +1/0 and trample for every time. So you can imagine playing your sleight of hand with this on there, look at the top 2 cards, maybe then a bit of burn, triggering, and then you're getting those extra +1/+1/0s and pumping up the, the flying, and then Wizards with flying might just fly over the top, or you've got something with trample that can just stomp over with the Arcanist as well. This is a very, very cool deck. I really do like it. Also has the Raminant Ruins, so craft from the runner Red Prowess. This is in there as well. It's just a really good utility land to get that extra bit of final damage in. So Raminant Ruins is a sweet, sweet card as well. But Wizards is definitely a deck I like to play. I like decks that obviously splash a bit of blue. I'm not a mono red player, but this is definitely a deck that would appeal to me. So I could definitely see myself crafting this, because Soulscar Mage across 2 decks, like I said, you could potentially play both decks with a few crafts. The last deck we look at is definitely one of the top meta decks. It's very competitive, and it's Gates, and it's only 14 rares. Gates is a very sweet deck. Now, we've got a deck in Standard, one of my recent videos, Caves, that just do very well. So if you like Caves and you want to play a deck in Historic, play Gates. It's definitely one of the best ones. So the idea is you've got all these different gates like you do have in the Caves decks that you've seen there. So many different ones. And then you've got a card like Maze's End. So pay 3, return Maze's End to his owner's hand, search it over for a gate card, put it on the battlefield or shuffle. If you control 10 or more gates with different names, you win the game. Absolutely brilliant, fun to play. I know a lot of people would play Gates Commander decks. They play like Gates in Historic, and when it was in Standard, obviously people would love to play all different types of Gates deck. And the Ram was one that gave me nightmares. It gets +1/+1 for each gate you control as long as you control 2 or more gates. It gets Vigilance and Trample as well. This can just become massive. And I remember in Standard I was beat down by this so many times. It was just unbelievable. Now it does obviously have some rares in there. 14, like I said, but quite a few of them. I think it's 7 of them are in the lands. It sends back if you control 2 or more gates, you gain 3 life. You're a slow mid-rangey deck, even though you've got a lot of 2 and 3 drops. You're still trying to build up to get that Maze's End, so gaining that life can definitely help against those aggro decks as well. Obviously, 2 Maze's Ends, you need 2 of these. You want your win con straight in there. And then you have a Baldur's Gate as well from a more recent set that comes in that can just make a lot of mana as well. Other rares in the deck, Primeval Titan, a card that is a big 6/6 trampling giant, but whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, search your library for up to 2 land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped. This is a great way. It's not legendary either, so you can put multiples on the field, and it's a great top-end way to go and get your gate and then have the stomping winner as well. Because you have cards like Explore, playing additional lands to ramp out. You have Growth Spiral to play extra lands, drawing cards as well. Guild Summit, ends the battlefield, you may tap any number of untapped gates you control, draw a card for each one as well. And then whenever a gate ends the battlefield, draw a card. So This is a deck that I think I'm going to have to craft. I'm going to have to get in there when I've got a lot more mythics and just splash into the Titan and the Maze's End, because I love playing caves, so I know I'm going to really, really enjoy this deck. Next rare, Escape to the Wild, exile the top 5 cards of your library, play cards, exile this one to end the turn, and then play an additional land as well. It's just a really, really fun deck to me. Now, it has a Wrath in Gates Ablaze, like the Caves deck I keep mentioning. X damage to each creature, where X is the number of gates you control. We run a few creatures, but not many. We run 8, so we need those kind of Wrath effects. It does run a lot of lands, 28 obviously, because you need those different lands for the gates. 20 of them are gates, and then a CMC average of really high compared to the previous decks at 3.4. So cards like Gates Ablaze are going to be needed to keep this, keep it clear, gaining a bit of life when you can, and then putting maybe a big ram down to stop some attackers, and then getting your primevals down. Why? If you don't win by attacking, the best way, obviously the spectacular way, is to win with your Maze's End, and that's really what the target of this says. So if you play this deck, please let me know if you've managed to do the Maze's End. I'd love to know if you have done that. So there's some really budget historic decks. If you were worried about getting to format because of the multiple rares, give these decks a try and let me know how you get on with them. As little as 7 rares going to 14, which is, still budget when you compare it to the 25 plus rares minimum that you're seeing in some of these decks, which is a lot. Sometimes you see 16 rares in the lands alone, which is absolutely, needed for those some decks. There's 5 colour decks obviously like that, and 4 colours. But when you're playing budget, you tend to try and stick to 1 or 2 colours if you can, because it makes it a bit lighter for you. Gates deck is different. A lot of those are all uncommons and common lands, so it helps out a lot. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and give it a thumbs up if you can. It really does help support the videos, and obviously leave me a comment. I always try and get back to every single one of you. If you want to support that bit extra further, check out my Patreon, much appreciated. And if you want to take any of these decks to your next F&M, check out my sponsors down below, Cardmarket. I would very much appreciate that. Anyway, you lot take care, and I'll see you on the next video.